Bonjour, bonjour à tous et à toutes, bienvenue. Welcome everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and for those who are able, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. Thank you, merci. We are going to begin our meeting today. Please be seated. We're not doing the national anthem just yet. We are going to begin our meeting today with a territorial welcome, so I'd like to invite Elder Claudette Commanda to meet me at the podium. So just before we begin, I would like to remind us all that Ottawa is built on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. The City of Ottawa honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. It's now my honor to introduce a great leader in our community, Elder Claudette Commanda, who is going to deliver a territorial welcome at our first council meeting of 2025. I think everybody already knows Elder Commanda, who's just a terrific person and who's been at many events here at City Hall over the years. Elder Commanda is an Algonquin Anishinaabe from Kitigan-Zibi Anishinaabeg First Nation, located in the province of Quebec. She is a Canadian University professor, cultural advisor, Indigenous rights activist, and has dedicated 35 years to promoting First Nations people, history, culture, and rights. So please join me in welcoming Elder Claudette Commanda.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm always honored to be amongst you, always honored to represent who I am, always honored to represent the nation, as well as to stand firmly on the foundation of my ancestors. It is very emotional, but emotional in a good way. Why? Because it's a beautiful day today, is it not? Despite the fact that it's a bit chilly, nevertheless, we have warmth in our heart. We have warmth in our love. We have warmth in our community bonding. We have warmth for one another, and that's so important, so important. Let us continue to shine as brightly as our grandfather the sun shines each and every day. For we are at a time that we must think about hope. Hope is free. And let us use that remarkable gift that the Creator has given us, hope, to come together in that beautiful, kind, loving, respectful way to build a strong community. Because it is community, community, community that brings forth Minopimadzwin, that good life. And I say these opening words because this is exactly how I feel with this beautiful positive energy that is in this circle. And literally, we are in a circle. Isn't that beautiful? Very beautiful. Your Worship, members of council, elders, Indigenous peoples, Dr. Vera and your family, community leaders, all community members of this beautiful city called Ottawa. I welcome you I say miigwej nichkiwe dog ikwe wag ashishinini wag. Miigwej kibija yagoma nongum pijaji koma anishnabe eki omama wenini wag. Bienvenue tout le monde.
Welcome,
Mes
everybody.
amis, mes sœurs, mes frères.
My friends, my
Bienvenue
sisters,
ici à la
my brothers,
Territorial,
welcome
Nord-Sud
here
de
in
nos
Ottawa
ancêtres de la nation algonquin.
with our
I'm always
ancestors from the
honored
Algonquin
and
nations.
always proud to welcome brothers and sisters, relatives, friends, colleagues. We welcome you into this beautiful homeland of the Algonquin people, the nation, the land that the Creator entrusted onto us since time immemorial, and the land that we will ensure that will be here forevermore. We come together today to celebrate, to honor, to remember, put forth our vision, learn from one another, and importantly, to share love and to share kindness. That is so important. It is said in our way of knowing and our way of being, we must always begin each and every day in that good way by appreciating what we are blessed with. We open our eyes to see another day, to see the beauty of life. We give thanks to our Creator and we say, Chimigwej kishiminado kichimigwej kinakego. Kichimigwej mishomiskizis, kichimigwej kokomistipikizis, kichimigwej jojoaki. Gishiminado, nibuksendam onje kakina, ikwe wag ashish, inini wag ashish, ogima. Nibuksendam, mashkawi wizin. Nibuksendam nibakawin, nibuksendam, chimino tagazuin ashish mino pomadzuin. Migwej kishiminado, kichimigwej onje, kichimigwej onje, ninuin emiawin. I humble myself before the great mystery, that great spirit, the Creator. With one heart and one mind and one spirit and at one voice, we give thanks to the Creator for blessing us this day. We give thanks for all of His creations. We thank our grandfather, the sun, whose breath warms us each and every day, and our grandmother, the moon, whose light shines upon us each and every night so we may see our sister, the stars, and to ensure that the bloodline of Mother Earth continues to flow, her water. As we give thanks to that great mother for all people, our mother, the earth, we thank her for all of her creation. Kinakego. We honor the ancestors. As I honored my ancestors, please know that I honor each and every one of you, your ancestors. But for the ancestors, we would not be here today. We thank our ancestors for always loving us and guiding us and taking good care of us. To the leaders who are here, the mayor and council, may your ancestors continue to pray for you and to guide you. And I know that the work you have is a great responsibility. But together as community, we will work to give the best of life each and every day to all members of the community. I have asked the Creator to bless each and every one of you and your families with a good life, good health in mind, in heart, in spirit, and in the physical. And that the leaders, whether the leaders are here in this circle or the leaders are out in the community, to be guided, to be blessed with that wisdom, to be blessed with that strength, to be blessed always with good words, and that together we will show respect of love and kindness to one another. Chimigwej, gishiminado, kichimigwej, kinakego, migwej onje ninuin emiawin. And I thank the Creator for blessing me today to see each and every one of you and to share my heart, my spirit, and my words with you. Continue this day in a good day, see tomorrow, and appreciate every moment. And again, just remember this prayer that is said through the tobacco that was offered. Hope is free. We have love and kindness for one another. And let us continue being that strong, united community. Let Ottawa be that role model for one of the best cities in this country called Canada. Would you not agree with me about that? So congratulations, Mayor and Council members and community. Take good care and just remember, I love each and every one of you. Kisagin, miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Great. Thank you so much, Elder Commanda, and thank you for your kind words and for your warmth and for your leadership in our community. And we love you too. Thank you. So I'm now going to ask Councillor Johnson to introduce the performers of our national anthem. Everyone, please stand if you're able.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Canadian Showtime Chorus is a competitive women's singing group specializing in four-part a cappella harmonies in the barbershop style. A chartered member of Sweet Adelines International, Canadian Showtime Chorus ranks in the top 25 of more than 500 choruses worldwide. The chorus was formed for the joy of singing in 1982, and I understand there's a member here that's been with the chorus for 41 years today. They join us from all corners of the city, but I am lucky to call them part of College Ward because they rehearse at the Nepean Creative Arts Centre in Bell's Corners. The Canadian Showtime, or I just said that. So the chorus repertoire includes classic barbershop arrangements as well as contemporary pieces. So the Canadian Showtime Chorus est une chœur de chant féminin compétitive qui se spécialise dans les harmonies.
Specializes in a cappella harmonies in the barbershop style and
Canadian Showtime Chorus se classe parmi les 25 meilleurs
this
chœurs.
choir is between the 25 best choirs in the world. It was created for the joy of singing in 1982, and we recruit our members from all parts of the city and the surroundings, and the repertoire includes various songs, contemporary and classic songs.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful rendition of O Canada. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Alors, nous avons une présentation spéciale.
So we have a special presentation before the council meeting this morning.
And I would like to ask Councillor Catherine Kitts, Chair of the Ottawa Board of Health, our City Manager Wendy Stephenson, and Dr. Vera Etches, Medical Officer of Health, to join me at the podium, please. There you are. So today we have the honor of celebrating Dr. Vera Etches and her 15-year career at Ottawa Public Health before she begins her tenure as the new CEO of the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. And Dr. Etches, I want to start by thanking you for everything you've done for our city. Thank you for your dedication and your leadership. Je tiens tout d'abord à vous remercier.
I want to thank you for your devotion and your leadership.
As I think everybody knows, the last few years in particular have been a very challenging time for someone in the role that Dr. Etches has occupied and led us from. You faced historic challenges, H1N1, COVID-19, mass vaccinations, and natural disasters. And you've done that with an incredible calm and wisdom and confidence and serenity that we are all grateful for. And you've done that at the same time as supporting a remarkably talented and diverse team at Ottawa Public Health so that they could do their jobs in helping residents access public health information and services and promote better health throughout our city. Dans tout ce que vous avez fait et tout ce que vous
In all
avez
that you've
réalisé,
done
vous
and
avez démontré une
did,
passion pour la
you
santé
showed a
publique.
lot of
In
passion
all
for
you've
public
done,
health.
in everything you've accomplished, you've shown a passion for public health. I know how important this is to you. And you've shown a resolve to navigate this complex and, let's be honest, sometimes challenging, sometimes contradictory field to advocate for the health of our neighborhoods, our communities, and our city. And I think I speak for everybody here, Dr. Etches, when I say it's not too late to change your mind. No, probably is too late. But no, when I say we are all so proud of you and so grateful to you, and I know your family has joined you here today, your husband and two sons, and I'm sure they are extremely proud of you as well. And your parents, who unfortunately could not be with us today, but I know are very, very proud of you as well. And I remember hearing about this before, but both your parents were physicians, and they were from Hazelton, British Columbia, which has a population of about 250 people. And that's where Dr. Etches grew up with her three siblings, so they made up a huge percentage of the population. And her parents, of course, were great role models, inspiring Vera's early interest in medicine and community care. But it wasn't until a trip over her summer break from med school, when she went to Malawi, that Dr. Etches began to grasp the power of public health. That's where she met public health nurses who were facing huge population level challenges related to issues like nutrition and HIV/AIDS. And yet, these nurses carried themselves with a tremendous amount of purpose and a tremendous amount of joy. And I think that's when the light bulb went on and Vera knew that her calling was public health. And through public health, Dr. Etches and her team could examine root causes. They could imagine new ways to talk about food and nutrition and vaccines, or mental health and social connection, ways that avoided stern lectures and instead gave people a sense of choice and agency in determining their own health. These were the kinds of lessons that Dr. Etches learned from one of her early public health mentors in Sudbury, Dr. Penny Sutcliffe, who's not related to me. But these were very important lessons that Vera then turned around and applied here in Ottawa, and especially during the pandemic. Vera and the team at OPH were literally writing the manual on how to protect people while they were actually doing this really important work. It was incredible, and it was incredible work at a really difficult and sometimes terrifying time for all the people of Ottawa. We all remember that. But I think what we remember most is the presence, the sense of calm, the sense of resolve that Dr. Etches carried herself with throughout that entire crisis. That, I think, bestowed a lot of confidence on the community, reassurance on the community, and it was invaluable, along with the great work that she and her team were doing. And that has always been true as Dr. Etches has built a tremendous legacy as a leader in public health. And I'm confident that you will apply so much of what you've learned as you take on your new responsibilities at CHEO and you continue to be part of the leadership of Team Ottawa. And for now, I want to commend you on your tremendous service at OPH, and your incredible leadership and service to the people of Ottawa. And on behalf of the many guests who join us today, among them members of Ottawa Public Health, including Dr. Trevor Arneson, Deputy Medical Officer of Health, Marie-Claude Turcotte, Director of Health Promotion and Chief Nursing Officer, Andrew Hendricks, Director of Health Protection. Thank you all of you for setting an example of courageous leadership in the face of unprecedented challenges. So I'd now like to invite Councillor Kitts, Chair of the Board of Ottawa Public Health, to share a few words.
Good morning, Mayor Sutcliffe and members of council, and a special welcome to Dr. Etches' family and the many members of the OPH team that are here with us today. Quay, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today as we recognize Dr. Vera Etches and her remarkable contributions as the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ottawa Public Health. As chair of the Board of Health, I have had the distinct pleasure of working closely with Dr. Etches over the past 2 years. But even before our direct collaboration, her name was synonymous with excellence in public health. Dr. Etches became a household name in the City of Ottawa as she led and supported us through an unprecedented pandemic response. As the mayor said, her leadership at Ottawa Public Health was instrumental in informing and reassuring residents while orchestrating critical services to prevent and control the spread of COVID-19. Her exemplary work, along with that of the OPH team, was rightfully recognized with the key to the City of Ottawa. The principles of equity, prevention, and impact are the cornerstones of the OPH strategic plan, and these values have been the guiding force behind Dr. Etches' work throughout her 15-year tenure with OPH. Elle a laissé sa marque sur l'organisation
He
en
left her
concentrant
mark on the organization by focusing on the capacity building to improve equity in work. Through her work, she emphasized the unique role that public health play in the health of the population and the prevention also, while encouraging partnership work and also by influencing the policies at all levels.
Extending beyond our city to the entire province of Ontario and across Canada. Dr. Etches has consistently demonstrated an unwavering commitment to making a profound impact in the community. She has tirelessly promoted these ideals within the OPH team and has worked to instill them in the next generation of public health leaders. By exemplifying the values of servant leadership, she has mentored numerous public health medical residents, leaving a lasting legacy. I am often in awe of how she manages to juggle so many responsibilities with grace and efficiency. Her leadership style is a perfect balance of confidence, strength, and empathy, setting the bar for us all. Her ability to lead with both determination and compassion is an inspiration to many, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have received her mentorship in these areas. It is a model I will carry forward throughout my own career. As we bid farewell to Dr. Etches and embark on this period of transition, I am confident that OPH will be continue to be guided by its mission, vision, commitments, and strategic plan. In 2025, OPH will build on these foundations and further advance efforts to improve well-being and enhance equity-driven services that reflect Ottawa's diverse populations. The OPH team has consistently demonstrated their capacity to respond to community needs, build productive partnerships, and advance shared goals. Supported by a stable senior leadership team and robust governance, the OPH team will continue to deliver outstanding results for Ottawa residents. In closing, and on behalf of the Board of Health, I want to extend our deepest gratitude to you, Vera, for your incredible contributions to Ottawa Public Health and to the City of Ottawa and its residents. We wish you the very best in your new role and look forward to witnessing the great things you will undoubtedly achieve. A heartfelt thank you. Merci beaucoup, miigwech.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kitts, and I'll now ask our City Manager, Wendy Stephenson, to say a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and good morning, everyone. Today, I'm absolutely honored for the opportunity to recognize and thank Dr. Vera Etches for her exceptional contributions to our city, our communities, as well as our organization. with her 15 years at the helm, I'm going to say, in working with Ottawa Public Health. As Mayor Sutcliffe mentioned, I think back to these past 15 years, and they have not been without challenges from a public health perspective. Mayor, you mentioned some of them. I think back to the days of H1N1, we thought that was the big one. And then the COVID-19 pandemic hit us, and, we've had our other fair share of emergencies. We've had tornadoes, floods, and significant weather events that really require a significant public health response. And Vera, you and your team have been there to support us all along the way. Throughout these challenges, one of the things that has always impressed me about Dr. Etches is her ability to tackle these issues head on. She is always calm and she is always confident at the helm, and that's her leadership approach. And I know that that's the leadership approach that the senior leadership team and I have very much appreciated working very closely with Dr. Etches throughout the years. And working with Dr. Etches so closely, especially over the last couple of years as we led through the pandemic, it really struck me how much she cares for the residents of Ottawa, how much she cares for our communities, and how much she cares for our organization. And it's clear to me that Dr. Etches has had a significant impact on improving the health in our population, in our city, and a mission that I know that she will continue as she takes on her new role at GEO. When I think back to when you were appointed as the medical officer of health in 2018, you became the first woman to hold that position. And having women in leadership roles is really something that we're very proud of here at the city. And I have no doubt that throughout your time, Vera, at OPH, you have been a role model to so many women and you have mentored them and coached them along the way. So I personally say thank you for that. And you've helped them achieve, so many of their goals. I know Dr. Etches isn't one for being in a personal spotlight. But, she is always very, very quick to praise her team over accepting personal accolades herself. And, I think this is one of the things that has made OPH so successful and to grow and develop so much over the last decade. When you ask Dr. Etches about some of the things that make her most proud of her work at OPH, she's going to tell you that it's all about the team effort. I think we heard from you, Councillor Kitts, in terms of that servant leadership approach, and how she works with the team in terms of getting those results. And Dr. Etches is also going to tell you about the OPH culture, driven by a team that is incredibly passionate about what they do, incredibly passionate about constantly learning and developing to meet the needs of our diverse and ever-changing population. That makes her incredibly proud. And I think when you ask her about what she's going to miss about working at OPH and here at the city, she's not going to hesitate saying that it's the people and the wonderful connections that she has made throughout the organization. So Dr. Etches, on behalf of the senior leadership team and staff at the City of Ottawa, I want to take this opportunity and I want to say thank you. It's been a privilege working with you. Au nom de l'équipe de la haute direction et de
On
tout le
behalf
personnel
of the city leadership and the staff, I would like to thank you
so much
sincerely.
for outstanding leadership. Thank you for being an exceptional role model. And thank you for the incredible work that you have accomplished. Merci.
Thank you very much, Wendy. And so now it's our honor to share a small token of our appreciation. Here it comes. Here we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Etches.
I recognize this because I'm an LRT user. It's very important to have public transit in our city. So merci beaucoup. And really, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, City Manager. I want to speak to Council, which is very difficult in this setup. But I'm talking to you and the city senior leadership, and of course my supportive family. Thank you, Elder Commanda, as well. I appreciate the chance to say a few words because it really has been an honor to serve with you over these last 15 years. The unwavering support from the mayor's office, from city council, and the city's senior leadership team has enabled Ottawa Public Health's work in the service of the people of Ottawa. I would say most importantly, it's together that we've improved the conditions for health and well-being in the city. So I was preparing a transition note. Actually, I've done that. It's there. It's ready for the city manager and the next medical officer of health. And in doing that, I realized it's confirmed for me. There's good evidence. We work with every single city department. And, it's from guiding updates to the official plan, reviewing zoning bylaws, supporting environmental sustainability, climate strategies. We strive to put well-being in the center of policies. And it's our collaborations on childcare and food security, access to public spaces for physical activity. We're working together to build a healthier city that's more inclusive for everyone. There's safe drinking water, there's accessible parks, effective transit systems. I mentioned these shape our health outcomes as much as any of the day-to-day work of Ottawa Public Health. Our colleagues who oversee affordable housing, community services, and protective measures play essential roles for the well-being of people in Ottawa. So really nothing we do in public health stands alone. Each challenge we tackle, whether it is a flood response or immunization coverage or much needed supports for people struggling with mental health and addictions, we know that it depends on strong collaboration. And this is the work that's done together at the front lines, people who are there with the community members, working hand in hand, as well as the people behind the scenes. I really must mention the back office support of people in finance, human resources, IT services. It's really this integrated spirit that allows us to adapt to the changing needs of the people in Ottawa, whether they're infectious disease or chronic disease. And I really want to thank everyone in this room for that partnership between the city and Ottawa Public Health and the Team Ottawa approach. Really appreciate that phrase, Mayor. So as councillors, you share information that is critical to inform the Ottawa residents about how to stay healthy and to follow important public health guidelines during some of our most challenging times. You councillors have provided feedback to us and insights about your residents' needs and about what your constituents expect from us every day. Nous remercions également les
We would
résidents
like
d'Ottawa
to
d'avoir partagé leur point de vue
thank
au fil des
all the councillors because you were able to share your insights.
feedback that's conveyed through community meetings, through public consultations, but also informally as we're in the community in neighborhood health and well-being hubs. It really influences our decisions and helps us make better services as we understand everyone's concerns and we seek to provide culturally appropriate services in partnership. Votre participation continue à nos programmes et consultations.
We
nous
will
a permis
continue with our
d'innover,
consultations.
d'ajuster nos priorités
We were
pour
able to
répondre aux
readjust our
besoins
priority
réels de nos
to
communautés.
answers to the real needs
Thank
of our
you for
communities.
allowing me to be part of serving this great city. I am leaving proud of what we've collectively accomplished. And I'm confident that City Council and all the staff here will continue to be responsive to the health needs of the community and to foster a thriving city. Alors, merci beaucoup, Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Etches. Thank you so much. All right, just before we start the main part of our meeting, since this is our first council meeting of 2025, I just wanted to provide a few opening remarks avant de commencer, puisque c'est notre première réunion du
Before we
Conseil
get
de
started, since this is our first council meeting of 2025, I wanted to provide you with a few opening remarks.
To think about how much has changed since the last time we sat around this table in December. There's a new U.S. president who is threatening tariffs against Canada, and our government is considering retaliation. The Prime Minister of Canada has announced his resignation, and the race to replace him is already underway. There's speculation that we could have both a provincial and a federal election sometime between now and the end of May. And just yesterday, it was announced that a federal department would be cutting as many as 3,000 jobs. So that's a lot of big news in a relatively short period of time. And it also represents a lot of uncertainty for our local economy. Cela représente également beaucoup
This represents
d'incertitude.
also a lot of uncertainty for our local economy.
We do have a lot to celebrate as a community. We should be thankful for that. We just hosted a very successful World Junior Hockey Championships. We have many more events coming to the city this year. We have a new direct flight to London that will launch in March. We just relaunched the Trillium line a couple of weeks ago after a period of very rigorous and transparent testing, and so far it's been functioning very well. Et je suis fier que nous
I
continuons à
am very
respecter
proud that
la crise de
we are
la
continuing to
proximité
respect
à
the
laquelle nos
affordable
résidents
crisis
sont confrontés.
our residents are
And I'm
facing.
proud of the fact that we are continuing to respect the affordability crisis that our residents are facing, and we did the hard work to find savings and efficiencies in the 2025 budget. In fact, I went for a skate on the Rideau Canal on Saturday. I'm not a very good skater, but I decided since it was open, I had to do it. And I encountered a number of residents, and one man skated up to me with his family and said, "Thank you for saving me $400 on my taxes." That's the amount of savings per household that we were able to achieve through the work of the Service Review Committee. So we have a lot going for us in Ottawa, but based on recent events, we have a lot to worry about as well. L'économie canadienne
The
pourrait être
Canadian
confrontée
economy
à
could
d'autres défis
face a lot of challenges this year.
Canada's economy, it could face a lot of challenges this year, and that will impact Ottawa. And we could see further job reductions in the federal public service, which will disproportionately impact Ottawa. We still face significant challenges around downtown Ottawa, the Byward Market, funding for public transit, and more. This year, we have a lot of work on our agenda, including the Transportation Master Plan, the Zoning Bylaw Review, the feasibility study and business case for options around waste management, the asset management and long-range financial plans, and preparing for the launch of the next phase of light rail, the extension to Orleans. We also need to make sure we're doing everything possible to support the construction of new homes. Nous devons également nous assurer
We
que nous
need
faisons tout
to support
pour
everything
soutenir
that
la
we can
construction de
to build more
nouveaux
homes.
logements. We need to build more homes, and we need to build them faster. As you know, our job is not to actually build homes, it is to approve housing projects. So after working with Councillor Leeper and Councillor Gower, and after consulting with people in the community, I've prepared a motion that will be introduced today to take further measures to streamline the approval process and find other ways for the city to support the construction of more homes. And of course, we will continue to build on the great work being done on affordable housing by our partners like Ottawa Community Housing. We've also begun the difficult work of the 2026 budget. I'm proud of all of the efforts that went into the 2025 budget, but the systemic and structural financial issues that we are facing as a city have not disappeared. We will be facing similar challenges as we prepare the next budget. It will take a lot of work to continue our balanced approach of investing in what matters most to residents while protecting affordability. So we have a lot of work to do this year. Nous avons donc beaucoup de travail à
We have a lot
accomplir
of
cette
work to
année.
do this year.
We face some big challenges, and we also have some significant opportunities. And I believe together we are ready to take them on. This is not an easy time in politics, as all of you know. There are people in politics, in other jurisdictions, and at other levels of government who see every challenge or issue as an opportunity to divide people. They see it as a moment to drive a wedge between their allies and their enemies, to go on the attack, to force people to choose sides, to demonize their opponents, people who have a different perspective. I'm grateful that that is not the approach that we have taken at City Hall over the past 2 years, and I want to thank each and every one of you for that. I get a lot of feedback in the community when I'm out and about from people who say they are happy to see us working together and treating each other with respect. And I hope we can continue to be a good example in a time when politics has become very, very divisive. Let's continue to work together and take a balanced approach. Continuons à travailler ensemble.
Let's work
Let's continue
together.
to consider the most vulnerable people in our community while also working hard to support economic growth. Let's continue to consider the needs of every part of our city, our vibrant rural communities, our suburban areas, and our urban neighborhoods. And let's continue to fight together for Ottawa's fair share of funding from other levels of government. If we can do all of that, we can get a lot done this year on behalf of our residents. So again, thank you, councillors, for all of your hard work. I look forward to working with you throughout 2025. Merci pour votre collaboration. Thank you for your
Thank you
collaboration.
so much for your collaboration.
For everything you do for your constituents and for our entire city. Merci beaucoup. With that, let's get started. I'll ask the council coordinator to do the roll call, please.
Councillor Lula.
Present.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Plante.
Ici.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Ici.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Giroux.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Duresh.
Here.
Councillor Hubley. Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Confirmation of minutes from the council meeting on December the 11th. Are those carried? And the in-camera minutes from that same council meeting, are those carried? Any declarations of interest? I'll note the communications on the agenda. There were no regrets that were filed. Motion to introduce reports. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. That the Built Heritage Committee Report 20A, Planning and Housing Committee Reports 39A and 40, the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submission for Items Subject to the Planning Act, Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of December 11th, 2024 be received and considered, and that the report from the City Clerk entitled 2022 to 2026 Midterm Governance Review be received and tabled for consideration by Council at its meeting on January 29th, 2025.
Is that carried? Item 12 is the 2022-2026 midterm governance review. So if people are comfortable dealing with that quickly, we can do that now. We are, of course, tabling this report. Questions and debate and motions on the content of the report will be in order on January 29th, and the city clerk and her staff will be available between now and then to answer questions. Are there any questions on the process? Okay, is that carried then? Item 13.1, designation of Église Évangélique Baptiste d'Ottawa at 284 King Edward Avenue. Is that carried? Item 14.1 from Planning and Housing Committee, Pinecrest and Queenview Station Secondary Plan. There is an amendment to this. Councillor Kavanaugh, you have that amendment?
Thank you. Whereas Planning and Housing Committee recommended approval of the Pinecrest and Queensview Station Secondary Plan on December 4th, 2024, and whereas reports ACS 2024 PDP PS 0089 included the secondary plan as document 1 rather than the details of the official plan amendment. Therefore, be it resolved that Council replace document 1 Pinecrest and Queensview Station secondary plan to ACS 2024 PDP PS 0089 with official plan amendment 41 as attached. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Is that carried? And the item is amended. Is that carried? Item 15.1 is the motion from Councillor Kitts at Planning and Housing Committee on Development Charge Funding Principle for New Roads Allocation. Is that carried? We will hold item 15.2 just for a moment while we move to the bulk consent agenda. Is the bulk consent agenda carried? Okay. So returning to item 15.2, Councillor Troster, I know you have an amended motion to introduce.
I do. Thank you so much, Mayor. The council approved the following as a replacement to the committee recommendations. 1, direct the city clerk on behalf of council to write to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing by April 1st, 2025, or within a week following the conclusion of a provincial election, whichever comes first, to request that the province, A, immediately proclaim into force the tenant protections in the Residential Tenancies Act 2006 that were passed in June 2023 through Bill 97 in order to prevent instances of illegal evictions. B, fund additional public awareness and education resources regarding tenant rights around evictions due to renovictions and repair, as well as evictions generally. And C, provide additional funding to add resources for provincially funded legal clinics to support and protect tenants and to prevent instances of illegal evictions. 2, direct the General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services to communicate with their counterparts in the appropriate ministries to inquire on how the tenant protections approved in Bill 97 under Schedule 7 will be brought into force and under what timeline. And A, if no response is received by staff within 3 months for whatever reason, including calling of a provincial election, staff will begin work on a bylaw review for the development of a renovictions bylaw and report back no later than Q2 2026. B, if a response is received that Schedule 7 of Bill 97 will be proclaimed in force no later than Q2 2026, staff will consider the effect, modify the scope of work if necessary, and report back no later than Q2 2026. C, if a response of another nature is received, staff will consider the nature of the response and advise council, and if required, seek additional direction from council. 3, approve that a copy of the council-approved resolution be shared with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. 4, approve that given the uncertainty around the implementation timeline from the province, as well as the lack of data available from the newly passed renovictions bylaws in other Ontario municipalities, that the General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services, in collaboration with the City Solicitor, provide interim updates as required on issues including but not limited to A, any changes to renovation bylaws from other Ontario municipalities, B, any known implementation changes from the provincial government regarding Bill 97, C, any data made publicly available relating to renovation bylaws in Ontario, D, any known legal challenges brought against renovation bylaws in Ontario. 5, direct staff to identify additional funding sources based on the scope as part of the Q1 2025 status report, should this motion be successful. And 6, approve the removal of the review of potential regulations for leaf blowers and small two-stroke engines and the review of existing regulations for body rub parlors from the 2023 to 2026 bylaw review work plan. Thank you.
Did you want to speak to it now, Councillor Troster?
Sure, I think I'll save most of my comments for closing, but I just want to thank everyone who worked so hard on this motion with me. It's pretty unusual to get an 11-to-1 vote, such a large majority of committee, on a motion that took a different perspective than the staff report, but I will say that my office worked really hard with city staff and also with the mayor's office and with councillors around this table to find a motion that really expressed what we wanted to convey, which is that unfair evictions are unacceptable. The statistics are really alarming. We know that there was a nearly 500% increase in N13 evictions over the last 3 years. And just this year alone, we've added 400 beds to our shelter system to get us through this winter. If there is a possibility to turn off the tap on one source of homelessness, that is what I believe the goal of this motion is. But we also agree that we wouldn't be in this position if the province did its job. And so this motion gives a chance for the province to respond. Similar to the municipalities of Hamilton and Toronto, we're asking them to enact the tenant protections that were already given royal assent under Bill 97 and are literally just sitting there. The scope of work for staff would change substantially if the Ontario government implemented those recommendations, and so this motion gives flexibility. The review might look completely different if the Ontario government took action. At the end of the day, every person that falls into homelessness, every unnecessary eviction is not only a human tragedy, but it costs our city money, a tremendous amount of money. And the financial case for doing something to me is really strong. But at the end of the day, when we have an issue of broad public concern, very similar to the motion that Councillor Hubley brought forward before Christmas on examining the idea of a bubble bylaw for vulnerable institutions, we as a council have a responsibility to fully explore that issue to meet the public demand, as far as I'm concerned. The goal of this motion is to have us vote on this issue and to put it to bed before the end of this term of council. I want to thank everyone for their collaboration. This really was a collaborative effort. When I see casework that are examples of really true human misery and injustice in my ward and in my office, I'm always trying to think of what is the policy fix here? How do we make this better? And how do we stop the bleeding? So this is one attempt, and I think it really gives a fair shake to the province for them to take action, because we know that a lack of provincial tenancy control is what's creating the incentive for landlords to evict. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of concerns regarding this motion, and I would start by simply asking how much we're willing to let rents go up across the city in order to add municipal regulation to the rental market. It already costs around $2,200 to rent a single bedroom apartment, and there are not many people that I speak to that want to see that number go up further. Let's be really clear. City staff were asked to look at this issue and they made a recommendation. Do not proceed. That does not mean that there won't be policy improvements, and it also doesn't mean that staff are ignoring the issue of bad actors in the rental market. But having spent the last several months analyzing the question of developing a municipal renovation bylaw, they've recommended against it, and rightfully so. This motion gives no consideration to the second and third order effects that a municipal policy would add to the cost and time of the rental market that's already overheated and that's bogged down in process. The simplest and most effective way to regulate rental prices is through increasing supply. Looking at N13 notifications as a bad thing is disingenuous oversimplification of the complex ecosystem of the rental market. There are very legitimate times that an older building requires intrusive maintenance for health and safety reasons. Lumping all N13 incidents as negative is a misrepresentation of this reality. Surge maintenance cycles are important to ensuring that buildings don't turn into slums, and adding regulation that restricts landlords from these processes will cause building degradation. Opportunities to turn a duplex into a triplex, that very gradual intensification that our new official plan espouses, will be undercut. Furthermore, by adding cost to the renovation process, this will push out the good actors in search of business opportunities in other cities that provide a better margin and with less downside risk. From this perspective, a renovation policy that is aimed at getting rid of bad faith actors may in fact have the very opposite effect of pushing out good actors and encouraging more bad actors to participate in this market. I also think it's important to call attention to the data that's being used to drive this decision. The Landlord-Tenant Board rule on bad faith evictions. Yet the distinction in this motion solely refers to N12 and N13 evictions, which lumps the routine and good faith evictions with the bad. There are very legitimate times that a major renovation is required. This is reasonable and normal in the landlord-tenant relationship, and it's further disingenuous to reference the spike post-COVID as an indicator of a predatory market. It makes sense for two reasons why there would be an increase in both N12 and N13 evictions at that time. Firstly, during COVID, landlords would look to delay major renovations and avoid evictions in the midst of a pandemic. So to see a residual bump after the fact should be expected. Furthermore, rent prices have skyrocketed since 2019, jumping about 50%. So on-demand capital investment and maintenance will be that much greater. Staff indicate that establishing a bylaw program for renovictions would require approximately 12 to 15 new FTEs and a budget of about $2 million annually to be implemented through a permitting process. These costs will be pushed directly onto tenants. This is a bad policy that will address the wrong issue. Our policy focus should be on increasing the rental market in order to stabilize prices, to incentivize a broad representation of good faith landlords, and to support provincial measures that focus on the punitive options available to deal with both bad faith landlords and tenants in order to improve the overall health of our rental market. Finally, there will be a federal election this year. There are very clear signals that housing accelerator funding from the federal government could become much more targeted based on the municipalities that reduce red tape and build more houses. Duplicating provincial regulation with an independent municipal renovation bylaw that may well contribute to endangering tens of millions of federal dollars due to its impact of adding delays to building renovations and much needed vertical infill development, making rent much more expensive, and adding to the already rampant inflation, affordability, and quality of life issues that we face. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Plante.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Acorn. You are in the room here in the room. We actually did a renovation tour in Vanier. I think it was September or October, if I'm not wrong. I think people do not quite understand that not doing anything that we just heard is much more expensive than being proactive with the renovation bylaw.
Just suggested that it would put our federal dollars at risk if we pass this. Is there anything in the housing accelerator funds that says we can't have a renovation bylaw?
Mr. Mayor, there is nothing in the Housing Accelerator Fund that says we cannot have a renovation bylaw.
Thank you very much. And I do want to disabuse, they said that there would be an increase in municipal rents if we have a renovation bylaw. Is there any proof that in the other cities, Hamilton, I think it's North Westminster, that rents went up once there was a renovation bylaw?
Thank you, Chair. Those other jurisdictions are just in the process of implementing, so it's too early to tell if there will be any long-term impacts on rental rates.
Okay, so we don't have any proof of that yet. Thank you very much. Okay, so I do want to thank Councillor Troster for all of her work and her staff. I know we've had a lot of conversations about this. As one of the only renters sitting around this table, many of you know that we have been given notice that we have to vacate our apartment in 18 months' time. We are currently in the process as a family of trying to find another place to rent in the downtown core. And it's absolutely absurd. First of all, trying to find a 3-bedroom apartment, and second of all, the rents associated with that. And I do want to point out that the cost of doing nothing is going to be exceptionally more expensive than the FTEs or whatever we need to put in place to get this system off the ground. As you know, staying in a shelter is $7,000 per month more expensive than staying in your unit. And that does not include the costs of policing, ambulance, fire, and everything else that comes with having to stay in our shelter system. So I'm going to enthusiastically support this motion today. And I want to thank everybody who reached out, who asked questions, because being a renter is precarious as is, and giving renters protection is the way we need to go in the future, because we know we're going to be having more renters, not just in this city, but across the country. So thank you, Councillor Troster. Thank you to your staff. And I implore everybody to vote for this motion as well. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Councillor Plante. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this motion, and I know everyone can read this motion, but I just thought I would go through the sections of this motion and my rationale for why I would support this. So first of all, the first part is simply write to the Premier, and I think many people would just like it to stop there, right? Write to the Premier and have the Premier react and say, absolutely, this is the province's role, and they'll enact the legislation, and all would be well, right? The rest of the parts of this motion help us get at the response if it's not that. If it's not, yes, we will do all the work and municipalities don't need to engage. So the second part outlines what possible responses we might get. If we get a response, if we get no response, then staff get to work. If we get a response that it will be proclaimed no later than Q2 26, staff will consider that effect. That's fair. If we get sort of a strange, unpredictable response, then council's advice will be sought, right? So I think this is important to understand. We have some flexibility here, honestly, thanks to Councillor Troster, who went through a lot of angst, I'm sure, to try to figure out what the wording would be to make sure that's reflected. The third part is simply to let AMO know what we're doing. Fourth part is that there will be updates because there's such an uncertain timeline from the province and this election and everything else that the city solicitor will give interim updates. That's a good idea. And then the fifth part is direct staff to identify additional funding sources, which is what we talked about a little bit at Planning Committee, right? If there are an additional funding source where, you know, maybe our building inspectors can be the inspectors that go in and determine if this was a massive renovation that required people to be relocated, then maybe we get some revenue from the province. We have a role that actually makes sense, and we can play a role, but the right role. And then the last part is that we have to use some other bylaw, drop some other bylaws to do this work. Fair enough. That, I say, is the only part of this motion that sort of, you know, upsets me a little bit, because I know that there are other bylaw reviews that are important. This one is important as well. So, you know, I would have liked to have seen us do some contemplation of other bylaws, but, you know, there's enough in here that there is flexibility, and we will have the opportunity to look at some other bylaws that we might have looked at otherwise. At EPPS, as I'm sure as I know the chair of EPPS is watching this and following this and understands this as well. So I think there's enough leeway here, and I'm hoping really ideally that the province will simply say, yes, we will enact this legislation, and municipalities won't have to do anything, and then all will be well. So I think this should really get unanimous support, because there's enough flexibility in that. And I would just thank Councillor Troster again for taking all the time, and the Mayor's office for all the work on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate there's a wide variety of opinions on this in the community, different stakeholders and around the table. We are taking the time to gather more data on this. That's one of the key parts of what staff will be doing eventually if we don't hear from the province. We do know from 2019 to 2023, the number of N13 evictions went up by 4 times. It was 25 in 2019, and I believe it was 103 or 104 in 2023. That's a big jump. We don't know why. In the staff report that we had in front of Planning and Housing Committee, they do believe some of those are bad faith evictions. We're going to gather additional data to determine, to give us a better idea. Before we go forward with a full bylaw, give us a better idea of what's happening. And I agree with my previous colleague, we have to be cognizant of unintended consequences. And that's also part of what staff would review before and recommend before we implement any new bylaw, understanding some of the trade-offs that might be involved there so we can make a fully informed decision. We're taking a lot of time on this. If we don't hear from the province, I think the earliest this would be implemented is 2027. That's a long way away. We're certainly not moving quickly in the time of a housing crisis. In the suburbs, many suburban wards, at least 1 out of 6 households are renters, are tenant households. In the core of Ottawa, that's above 50% in a lot of communities. It's significant. I'm also one of the other tenants on council, so maybe this one hits a bit different for me. But I think in this environment of very low vacancy and very high rent, if we have an opportunity to provide better protection for tenants in our city, we should be taking that opportunity. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the mover of the motion and all the work that was put into this. Appreciated. I can't agree more that we need more rental supply. That's obvious. But what we really need is affordable rental supply, and that's what's at issue here. The renovictions means that people are being asked to leave affordable rent so it can be renovated, and the renovations are primarily to raise the rent. And that is what is at the heart of this. And that is causing a lot of hardship. You only had to look into the faces of the people at Aspen Towers, where I went door to door, where they found out, it was on the Canada Day weekend, that they had to get out, and they had 60 days. They were getting a chunk of money. But the chances of them finding equivalent rent was almost impossible. It was all kinds of people, including families, that couldn't afford anything else but to live in an apartment building. So there is a need. It's very significant, and we have to keep reminding ourselves that we have to do more on affordable housing, and frankly, it should be nonprofit. That is where we make truly affordable housing. I'm sorry, but the market is not doing it for us. Just think of all the the rental developments we've approved over the last years, they're sitting there empty lots. I've seen them. They're not moving. We've done our part. We said, yes, go ahead, build. They didn't. And there's a reason for it. You know, there's costs, rental, you know, the interest rates, et cetera. Those are all good reasons. However, we've done our part as a municipality. We're saying, yes, when you come to us, we're doing everything we can. And it's certainly not easy. It's certainly not easy. The neighbors don't necessarily want it. But we realize, no, we need more housing overall. So that's the part that we're responsible for. What the province is responsible for is landlord and tenant rules. And we're trying to fill the gap because they're not doing it. It's sitting there, hanging there, and we need that. I would be very happy if they would just do their part so that we do not have this stress. So there's not this angst. When I saw the people in that building, the terror of trying to find something new, how do you think we end up with more homeless? Because people can't afford to find something. It's real. I heard that from the mission, where they have people that lost their places and there's just nothing left. So I wholly support this, and I hope that we didn't need it because I hope the province acts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. So I will be supporting this motion. I want to thank my colleague, Councillor Troster, for the leadership that she showed on this massive file over the past year. So I have definitely heard from landlords in Ward 9 who express, you know, concern over the processes that they may have to jump through once this bylaw, if and when this bylaw passes. These are small business people that, you know, that express legitimate concerns. These are good faith landlords, but I am also aware of not the growing trend, but there certainly is a number of bad faith landlords for which this renovation bylaw is seeking to address. I was with Councillor Kavanagh when we went door to door at Aspen Towers in Bay Ward to speak to tenants who were in shock and awe over what their landlord had dropped on them without any notice, without any information on how to navigate what was before them, and they were terrified. And so it is this kind of renovation that is meant to, you know, to serve the interests of those kind of tenants that I do believe we have a duty to protect. And I just want to address comment made by a colleague. So I'm aware that post-COVID, there certainly was a spike in various categories of evictions as landlords sought to catch up with much-needed renovations on homes that they may not have been able to occupy for 2 years. I'm aware of that, but I'm not so concerned by that spike, and I don't think that spike necessarily speaks against what I believe there is to be a growing trend. And so I suppose the question I want to ask to staff, to GM Frere, is it not true that for several years there has been a growing spike in various categories of eviction notices that likely would have continued on even had there not been that pause during COVID?
Thank you, Chair. From the data requests the staff completed of the Landlord Tenant Board, the data showed an increase as per the inquiry summary. There was a decrease in all notices, certainly during COVID, but overall, yes, there was an increase overall.
Yeah, and I do believe that trend goes back several years, and it likely would have, had there not been an interruption during COVID, it probably would have carried on through that and beyond today. So thank you for that, Chair. I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll do the questions real quick out of the gate. So again, we're just studying. We're not actually making a decision today. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you. And I want to thank Councillor Troster. We worked very closely on this one to ensure that some of the gates would be met. And the objectives are that the province, because we're always the ones, they come to us No one's going to the province all the time. They're coming to us when there's landlord-tenant issues, even though it's not our responsibility. So if we can keep the feet to the fire and keep that moving, a lot of the concerns that I had about the election timing have been addressed with the 3-month election pause. I think that's important. I also have a question for bylaw services. I think this is one of those things, and I did ask this about not going back to EPPS to reprioritize things due to the urgency of this, and the chair ultimately did make the statement that council does have the ultimate decision. I supported the chair in that, and that's why we're here today dealing with this. But what does it do as far as, can we reprioritize other bylaw policies now? What's the mechanism for that? Because unfortunately this debate has created a discussion around the vehicles for hire, the noise bylaw for construction that the East End councillors are dealing with all the time during LRT, as well as animal care and control, so leashed parks and backyard chickens. But what is the mechanism? Because we set it for the term. Can you explain to us how we'd be able to get those objectives to reprioritize? Because I think that discussion may have to take place.
So, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll start and then I'll hand it over to Valerie to see if she has anything to add. So yes, as you mentioned, Councillor, at the beginning of the term, we have a bylaw review work plan that gets approved by Council. If at any time there's emerging issues or there may be a need to shift priorities, then we could look at doing that, and that would be done through a motion. So that would be the mechanism in which to do it. So that formed part of the bylaw review work plan report that was approved by Council. That sets that out. I'll just see if my colleague has anything else that she wishes to add.
Mr. Mayor, just to add, the 2 bylaw reviews that are being suggested to be removed today as part of the motion before council are 2 that we were sought advice on. They are of a medium scope, and that work would be necessary to be removed in order to accommodate the development of a renovations bylaw.
Yeah, and I think that was the concern. And again, I will be supporting Councillor Troster with the 3-month election pause, because I'm hoping that that election pause will, of course, just to be clear, election pause means no more resources, no more money, no more dedication to this that we have to fund. We just hit pause for 3 months until the election's over, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Councillor?
So there's a 3-month pause that is in this. So if there's a provincial election writ dropped for the 3-month period, bylaw is to literally cease all work on that study for the 3-month period until that 3 months is over, and then they commence again to be able to put the pressure on the province.
That's correct.
Good. So that is where I'm going, is maybe we have to look at the other bylaws in the future. So I'm going to watch and see what we can do. I've spoken to other colleagues, and I think I'll work with the chair of EPPS about the ones that fell under the line that now I think he even agrees that we may want to revisit the term priorities. Even though we gave you the advice, we see this one here specifically as something that's very important. So please don't take it as disrespect to the great work. I think it's opened up a greater conversation because we made bylaws so busy over COVID that now we have all these new priorities. So I did want to thank also the chair of Planning and Housing for a very professionally run meeting. We got through many delegations and kept it to what the discussion was. Is about studying this N13, keeping the pressure on the province. So that's all I have to add for this discussion today, Mr. Mayor, but I look forward to supporting Councillor Troster's motion today.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Just to clarify, though, that it's not that the work will be paused if there's a provincial election, because if there is a provincial election in the next couple of months, the work won't have started yet, right? The work doesn't start for a period of time first, so we're not pausing the work, correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate this continued discussion from committee today. I do, though, want some additional clarification on this April 1st date, because the issue we're discussing is significant and it's important, and it needs to be addressed, in my mind, sooner rather than later. We certainly have heard from the public who have stated how important this is. And so what are the benefits of waiting until April 1st to send our letter? Let's just assume there's no election by then. That date is still unknown. Why would we not, if legislation's already been passed, Bill 97, and we want the schedule to be in force, why would we not just reach out to the province now and make that request?
Councillor Troster, did you
Mayor,
want to speak to that?
I can speak to that. I think there was a feeling on behalf of the mayor's office, and you could speak to this too, Mayor, that we wanted to make sure that we're speaking to, if there is an election, to a government with a fresh mandate. So the idea is to just hold off. So either until after the completion of the provincial election, because we assume the writ is going to drop within the next couple of weeks, if not, no later than 3 months.
Okay, that's possible. There's just a lot of what ifs. I'm just thinking if the matter is, some call it urgent, then I would want to write that letter sooner rather than later, but I'm certainly willing to support the will of the majority around the table. And just for staff, on part 2 of the motion before us, the reporting back, clause A and clause B have the words report back no later than Q2 2026. Just to be crystal clear, what are you reporting back on?
Mr. Mayor, with respect to Clause A, we would be reporting back on the results of the bylaw review. With respect to Clause B, we would be reporting back on the results of the bylaw review, perhaps as modified, if with a modified scope, depending on the coming into force of Schedule 7 of Bill 97.
So again, just maybe I'm the only one that needs this additional clarity, but the results of bylaw reviews of other jurisdictions, or are you actually by Q2 2026 going to submit a draft Ottawa bylaw for us to consider implementing or not?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we would conduct the work and report back on the results of our bylaw review for the potential adoption of this type of regime here in Ottawa.
So you actually are being directed and will produce a draft bylaw for us to approve by Q2 2026.
We will conduct a bylaw review, Mr. Mayor, and report on the results of that, which may include a draft bylaw. We haven't done the work yet, but we are being directed to do the work under motion clause 2A.
What outcome could be other than you providing a draft bylaw for our approval?
Mr. Mayor, as I understand clause 2B of the motion, if Schedule 7 of Bill 97 is actually proclaimed into force, some of the material that would otherwise be in a renovations bylaw may be properly enforced in the Residential Tenancies Act. So the scope of the regulations that may be appropriate here for Ottawa may change a little bit. So as staff understand clause 2B, we would consider that coming into force, look at what requires protection in terms of our bylaw review, and then report out on that.
Okay, I understand that. That's good. In lieu of Schedule 7 being implemented or enforced, you will be bringing a draft bylaw to committee. Is that correct?
It would likely result in a draft bylaw, Councillor, but we have to do the work to see.
Fair enough. All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.
Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask if Councillor Hill has raised a number of very good points that should be included in any report that comes back. And a couple that I want to highlight is the importance if we are to move forward with some sort of local bylaw or draft bylaw, I think it's very important that it be risk-based. In other words, punish the bad actors, identify the bad actors and have consequences for them, but do not slow down or hinder the good actors that are trying to get more housing on the market and available for people, because we have a shortage of good quality housing. I wouldn't want to, as Councillor Hill pointed out, I wouldn't want the city to be a roadblock in getting more housing to market as quickly as possible. I think the other point I want to make to support what Councillor Hill was saying is I believe the report that comes back, we need to make sure that the accurate or the data that's included in it is accurate. We did get council received some emails questioning the data that was put forward at committee as part of this motion. And I just think that before we take the final step of vote on something, I want to make sure that you put the extra effort into making sure that the data is accurate, the numbers are correct, and the analysis is correct on that. And I think I can tell you I've started out this process when it first came forward. I wasn't supporting it. I didn't want to get in the way of getting more housing to market. But I have to compliment Councillor Trochet on the work that she's done on this. The changes that have been made since committee have caused me to lean towards supporting this today. And if the rumors are true that you read the book, The Art of the Deal, then congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I don't have a lot to add to what's been said, but the question of incentives and disincentives has been brought up. And I want to point out that right now, in what has been described by my colleague, Councillor Hill, as an overheated rental market, all of the incentives are on in favor of the landlord seeking ways to try to achieve turnover in order to get higher paying renters. We don't know how many of the spike in N13s that we saw are spurious renovations in order to achieve that turnover, but it's not none. And in some neighborhoods, it is common. And every one of those spurious renovations is a story of certainly stress, but in many cases, hardship. It is very difficult for long-term tenants who are being renovicted out of their homes to find affordable rental housing in this market. Whether or not a potential renovations bylaw creates disincentives is up to us. This is not the decision point today at which we put in place a renovations bylaw. This is the point at which we ask staff to come back to us with recommendations. Certainly the measures that we are contemplating through modeling Toronto and Hamilton and other jurisdictions is no more disincentive to to renovation than what the province has already proposed. This government at Queen's Park has determined that this is an issue that is important enough to act on. And so they are already putting in place many of the measures that we contemplate we may want to put in place. So if there is a disincentive, A, that's up to us to determine how far down that path we go. But B, it's no more disincentive than what the government has already felt compelled to put in place through the legislation. I hope that the government in Queen's Park brings into force its legislation. But if it doesn't, and given those stories and financial hardship, I think it's important that we take on the same urgency to act that spurred the government in Queen's Park to take this work on to begin with. So I certainly hope that colleagues will support moving ahead with this today so that we can start protecting tenants without necessarily disincentivizing renovations that need to happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Luloff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This really is a well-meaning motion. However, in Ontario, tenants have the right to first refusal following a renovation. If some landlords do not respect these rights, we have the Landlord-Tenant Board to handle those cases. This is clearly a provincial issue, and if the work is already being done on this with legislation passed, and if regulations are already being worked on, we should not be duplicating efforts. Our dollar does not go as far as a provincial dollar. Nothing stopping councillors from speaking to provincial counterparts about the issues that matter to the residents and asking for timelines on when things are going to be enacted. I do it all the time. Quite lucky, my ward has 2 MPPs. I get to speak with both of them if I have questions on these sorts of things. The bylaw review is behind schedule. We should not be removing items to study an issue that is clearly under provincial jurisdiction. We should be concentrating on areas of our core competency. We have issues of bus reliability. We have major financial pressures, as we heard today in the mayor's speech. Our roads are falling apart, and we don't have the infrastructure capacity to handle the growth that we are experiencing. These are all clearly municipal issues and things that we should be concentrating on. We need to continue with our council-approved priorities and stay in our lane. We can't continue to place provincial costs on municipal property tax rolls. Every time we do so, we make housing more expensive. Every time we enact a policy or a bylaw that makes it more difficult to build new units, we make housing more expensive. This is a well-meaning motion, but at best, it will not address the issue, and at worst, it's a side situation worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Desroches.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment and a question to staff. First of all, I do want to commend staff for the report that was undertaken. I do think it was some very solid research and gave us some good perspective in terms of some of the risks and some of the potentially opportunities, although it's very early for some of the other jurisdictions that have adopted this. I do feel that we are moving into an area of provincial jurisdiction, and when we do that, I think it weakens our case when we go to them for funding for areas that are in fact our jurisdiction. So I will join my colleague, provincial government, to enact the legislation. It's unfortunate that members of the opposition didn't support this bill when the time came. I think maybe that might have helped put some impetus behind this if it was so important to many of their constituents. But I am hopeful that the provincial government will follow through on their commitment, given that they are very close. I appreciated the outreach and the work that's been done by Councillor Trosser, the sponsor, and I spoke to her prior to this, and I share the concerns with the bad actors, and we need a regime that will deal with the bad actors. But I do hear from some of the delegations that were at committee that we're opposed to all renovictions, and I don't think that's the case. We're looking, I think, for a bylaw that focuses on those who act in bad faith. In fact, I would like to think that we are supportive of renovations right across our city because, as the report said, we have a very old housing stock that will need things like energy efficiency improvements. And thankfully, the provincial government has just introduced a program where homeowners can get rebates on various types of energy efficient renovations to their homes, whether that be windows and doors and different heating systems and what have you. And maybe each one of those on their own isn't enough to justify a renovation, but I'm sure many homes right across the city will be taking advantage of this very good program to ensure that we are, again, putting money back in people's pockets and having a much greener city. So I'm just wondering if someone and staff here could answer, where do renovations and changes to older buildings that become more environmentally friendly, where does that fit in our kind of climate change strategy that we have with the City of Ottawa?
Mr. Mayor, in the climate change master plan, there's reference to looking at the energy efficiency performance of buildings, and we will be coming forward in this year with high performance building standards, the implementation of those.
Right, but I'm sure we're supportive of renovations happening across our city in older parts of our city to adapt, again, new windows, new doors, new heating systems, new insulation. I think we want to see that happen, especially in some of the older stock that we see.
Yes, and in fact, we have a program that supports homeowners in undertaking those types of renovations.
Yeah, and again, we will see more of this, and I don't think it's just about increasing price. I think we'll have some good faith landlords that are looking to improve their buildings and make them more energy efficient, not just in terms of the benefit to the environment, but lowering the costs for both themselves and I think the tenant in the longer term. So again, I'll support the call to the province, but I do have concerns with us undertaking work too soon, and again, allowing the province to follow through on their commitment. And if there's elections, call on all parties to support a bill that we'll see what's proposed go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desroches. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I wasn't necessarily going to speak, but I just wanted to reinforce that it is our responsibility as elected officials for the people of Ottawa to examine legislation that will benefit the people of Ottawa. And it is perhaps a place where provincial governments are not playing a part. But I would say there's actually a lot of places where we are looking to the provincial and federal governments to play their part. And the idea that we would balk at doing something that actually improves our financial outcomes as a city, when the other case is just do nothing, while also serving the people who elected us to be here, I find to be a very narrow view of why we were elected. And there are other ways that the provincial and federal governments are already lagging in technologies that are advancing the financialization of housing. There's a class action lawsuit being currently brought against large landlords, including some that are here in Ottawa, that were using a software to price fix apartments. That is like way beyond the purview of this bylaw, but that is one of the reasons why housing is not affordable. It's not because small landlords are doing a kitchen. The financialization of housing is a macroeconomic issue. We cannot wait for the macroeconomics of the world to be solved before we start taking back a little bit of control of what is happening in the city of Ottawa for those actors who are living in homes that perhaps are not actually even up to our standards, but do so because it is what is naturally occurring as affordable housing. So let's be courageous here and let's try and figure out what is possible instead of being concerned about who does what where, because this motion has already done all that work for us. It is a cautious, incremental motion on a serious issue for which we have determined is a grand priority. So let's be courageous here. It's been very moderated in its approach, and I think we can have a nice win to start off 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Troster, did you want to wrap up?
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank everyone around this table for what I think is a really thoughtful discussion. The reality is, just as Councillor Johnson said, when people are evicted into homelessness, we pay to house them as a city. And when folks end up in shelter, the outcomes are not good across the board, and they are very, very expensive. I might remind the economically conservative among us here that we are adding 400 new shelter beds this winter alone. The only way to end homelessness is to stop it at its source. I will simply say that I will remind folks that this is a vote to further study the issue. It is not a vote on a bylaw itself. When staff comes back in 2026, we will know what the provincial government is planning on doing or not doing. We will have more than a year out of data out of Hamilton, which enacted a renovations bylaw that started this month. And we will also have the financial case for whether doing something is ultimately more affordable than doing nothing. I know that if we decide to proceed with a licensing regime that involves hiring a bunch of people, there will have to be a strong financial case for it. And that is why we're asking staff to do the work. There's compelling evidence in New Westminster, BC, when they implemented a renovation bylaw, they went from 330 evictions in the 3 years preceding to 0 the next year. That doesn't mean renovations weren't happening. It means that tenants were not displaced when those renovations were happening. And in most cases, landlords were able to swap out a countertop without terminating someone's tenancy. So, you know, when I hear from rural colleagues that a roundabout is not going to work for a truck, I believe you. And I need you to open your hearts and to believe rural council or urban councillors who have a large aging housing stock in our ward, that these renovations are real and that they're primarily impacting seniors, specifically senior women on fixed incomes. That is not a dignified way to retire. So I hope that you'll join me in trying to do something concrete to end homelessness in our city. And I'll just end by thanking the folks who came from committee to tell their stories. It's not easy to come and talk about a traumatic situation that happened to you. And one of the stories that struck me was from Aspen Towers, the building that Councillor Kavanaugh mentioned, where an individual talked about receiving an N13 notice, being unable to figure out who the landlord was because it was a buried number company. And the only way they were able to figure out what was going on was by posing as a potential new tenant and asking for a tour of one of those units. And what they found was an apartment identical to their own with a coat of paint slapped on and a new countertop added, and the rent was doubled. It was very, very clear what was going on in that building. So I agree, we don't want to punish good actors, but the reality is right now bad actors are going unpunished and it's costing the city tremendously. So I want to thank everyone for the work that you did in collaborating with me on this motion. I hope that we can move forward today, continue to work on the issue and see where we're at in a year. And you know, the last thing I'll say is, similar to the motion that Councillor Hubley brought forward about examining a bubble bylaw, we as a council have a responsibility to be responsive to the needs of our residents. And when there is a huge demand, when there's a huge outcry from the community, it is understandable that we shift our priorities, particularly when we voted housing and homelessness to be one of our #1 priorities as a council this term. So thank you very much. I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. So I'm going to suggest that we vote separately on the advocacy component of the motion and then on the rest of it. So on item 1, which is the directing the city clerk to write to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, vote on that separately and then vote on the rest of the motion, if everybody's okay with that. So on item 1, is that carried? And on the rest of the motion, could we have a recorded vote, please?
Councillor Menard.
Yes.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Councillor Curry.
Yes.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Councillor Duresh.
No.
Councillor Lowe.
No.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Hill.
No.
Councillor Leeper.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes.
Councillor Devine.
Yes.
Councillor Troster.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley. Councillor Kelly.
Yes.
Councillor Brown.
No.
Councillor Bradley.
Yes?
Councillor Luloff.
No.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor Plant.
Oui.
Councillor Giroux.
No.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Yes.
19 yeas, 6 nays.
Okay, thank you. There are no in-camera items on the agenda. Motion to adopt reports. Councillor Carr.
That the Built Heritage Committee Report 20A, Planning and Housing Committee Reports 39A and 40, the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of December 11th, 2024 be received and adopted as amended.
Is that carried? Motions of which notice has previously been given. 19.1 Stittsville Community Micro Grant. Councillor Gower. I don't know. Did you want to speak to that?
I'll just give you the therefore
Sure.
be it resolved. Yeah. Therefore be it resolved that council approve an exemption to section 4.1 of the council expense policy to allow for the allocation of funds to individuals in the form of microgrants from the Ward 6 Constituency Services budget for the purposes of continuing the Stittsville Community Microgrant Program within the 3.5% annual budget limit on donations and sponsorships. And be it further resolved that any microgrant awarded in the context of the program continue to be subject to all other provisions of the council expense policy, including requirements for public disclosure of the contributions and the microgrant recipients, and be it further resolved that this exemption remain in effect until the end of the 2022 to 2026 term of council. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for seconding this. We had a very successful pilot project with this last year, so seeking to continue that for this year and next year. Last year, we had 29 community applications, and we awarded 12 micro grants totaling $2,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Is that carried? 19.2 is regarding the Romanian Embassy, 655 Rideau, open road allowance. Gosia Plante.
Oui, je vais juste attendre que c'est sur l'écran. Oh, here it comes. Whereas the former regional council approved the closing of a portion of Rideau Street adjacent to the Romanian Embassy on November 22nd, 1978, and whereas concerns have arisen with respect to parking on these lands and the provision of loading area for secure entrance, and whereas the rededication of this parcel would permit the municipal regulation of this area as a diplomatic loading area and restrict parking, and whereas the government of Romania is prepared to continue to conduct maintenance of these lands through entering into a maintenance and liability agreement with the city. Therefore, be it resolved that subject to recommendation 2, the current closed portion of Rideau, Part 1 of Reference Plan 5R4058 be opened, that a maintenance and liability agreement to the satisfaction of the General Manager, Planning, Development, and Building Services be entered into between the City of Ottawa and Government of Romania. That's it. Merci.
Merci. Is that carried? Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. We have a motion regarding the new mid-size performance venue at the corner of Sussex and Rideau on suspension of the rules. Is that carried? Conseillère Plante?
Oui. Whereas June 12, 2024, Council directed staff to negotiate a lease with Live Nation Canada Inc. for the exclusive use of a portion of George Street to facilitate site logistics and to provide a loading space for a budding performance venue located at 4757 Rideau. Whereas those negotiations have concluded and the terms of the lease have been agreed to by Live Nation Canada, and whereas it is desirable for this lease to be signed in a timely manner so that the lease between Live Nation and NCC for the performance venue can be finalized. Therefore, be it resolved that the rules of procedure be suspended to permit the introduction of the following motion. Whereas the proposed terms of the lease for that portion of George Street currently utilized as a parking area have been finalized, and whereas the terms of the lease are in accordance with motion number 2024-3809, and whereas the consideration of the lease has a value of $2.4 million, subject to annual escalation rates and increases in the loss of the city's parking revenue generated at the subject site, and whereas the amount of above delegated authority for staff approval and execution. Therefore, be it resolved that Council delegate authority to the Interim Director of Housing Solutions and Investments to negotiate, enter into, conclude, execute, amend, and implement a lease agreement with respect to that part of George Street on Plan 42482, lying east of the eastern limit of Sussex Drive, and Plan 42482, and lying west of the western limit on Dalhousie on Plan 42482, except Part 1 on Plan 5R6343 as directed in the PIN between Live Nation Inc. and the city. Merci.
Merci. Councillor Desroches.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, I fully support this and I commend everyone who's working on this and the collaboration that's happened with the NCC, and I hope that continues with the NCC. I think everyone around this table has projects in their ward potentially that involve the administration, the NCC, and looking for timely decisions. And Mr. Mayor, you've talked about accelerating our housing file. You know, we're going to need the help of the NCC to do that. They really need to step up, and this is a good example where when we work together and we do so in a timely fashion, suspending the rules to bring things to the table to get it done, I hope the NCC will follow suit on some other files that they have before them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Luloff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the three East End councillors at least would probably very much agree with what Councillor Desroches just said there. So this is, I suppose, is a message to the NCC board. We're playing ball with you. Perhaps you should come to the table and play ball with us, because I think people sat in traffic on the 174 today for over 2 hours when there's clearly an easier way to get to the 417 through a southern corridor, and we'd really appreciate your help. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is the motion carried? Councillor King has a motion seconded by me regarding lighting up City Hall for Green Square Day on suspension of the rules. Is that carried? Councillor King?
Thank you so much, Your Worship. Whereas Islamophobia has no place in our city, and whereas on January 29th, 2017, a mass murder and injury of Muslims occurred at the Islamic Cultural Center of Quebec City, shocking all Canadians and the entire nation. Whereas this tragic event serves as a reminder that we need to be ever vigilant to stand up to Islamophobia and hate, terror, racism in all of its forms. And whereas the Green Square campaign is a nationwide effort to remind Canadians to stand up against Islamophobia, and whereas the Green Square campaign encourages citizens and city councils to light their city halls green on January 29th, and whereas lighting City Hall green demonstrates to the Muslim community of Ottawa that we stand with them against Islamophobic hate, be it resolved that the city consider illumination in green of the Heritage Building at City Hall on January 29th, 2025 and 2026, the end of this council term, to honor the victims of the Islamic Cultural Center of Quebec City and show solidarity as a city with the Green Square campaign, and as a symbol of this commitment, light City Hall in green on January 29th every year thereafter, and that the fee associated with this illumination be absorbed within existing budget's Office of Protocol.
Thank you, Councillor King. Is that carried? Councillor King also has a motion, also seconded by me, on lighting up City Hall for Holocaust Remembrance Day on suspension of the rules. Is that carried? Councillor King?
Whereas anti-Semitism has no place in our city, and whereas there has been a significant increase in anti-Semitism in Ottawa and throughout Canada, and whereas it is important that the City of Ottawa continue to stand united in allyship with Jewish residents against anti-Semitism, and whereas it is important that the horrors of the Holocaust and lessons learned remain present in the public consciousness, never to be repeated, and whereas in 2024, the Mayor of Ottawa proclaimed January 27th as International Holocaust Remembrance Day in the City of Ottawa to create greater public understanding and awareness of this terrible period to 1945. And whereas in 2024, City Council passed a motion to illuminate in yellow City Hall to honor International Holocaust Remembrance Day as a symbol of our commitment to combat anti-Semitism. And whereas these initiatives were well received by Council and the public and mark an important milestone for the City of Ottawa in combating hate, be it resolved that the City approve the illumination in yellow of the Heritage Building at City Hall to honor International Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th, 2025 and 2026, the end of this council term, as a symbol of this commitment, and that the fee associated with this illumination be absorbed within existing budget's Office of Protocol.
Thank you, Councillor King. Is that carried? Notices of motion, Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Whereas Canada Theatre has operated from the Ron Maslin Playhouse at 1 Ron Maslin Way in Canada, Ontario since its construction in 1996, and whereas the City of Ottawa is the landlord for the Ron Maslin Playhouse, and whereas Canada Theatre entered a long-term lease agreement with the city as a tenant of the Ron Maslin Playhouse that remains in effect, and whereas Section 14.1E of the lease agreement entitles the city to have one representative on the tenant's Canada Theatre's Board of Management. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Ottawa, as the landlord, exercise its entitlement of Section 14.13 of the lease agreement to have a city representative appointed to Canada Theatre's Board of Management, and be it further resolved that the Councillor for Ward 23, Canada South, serve as the city's appointee to the Canada Theatre Board until a successor is appointed, and be it further resolved that the Councillor for Ward 23, Canada South, and the General Manager of Recreation, Cultural and Facility Services be delegated the authority to identify an appropriate city staff representative to the board long-term, with the appointment and notification to take place by way of memo to council.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I have a notice of motion for the next meeting. This is your motion. And I want to say thank you very much. You referenced it in the earlier comments. I know procedurally you didn't want to put this on the table, so I'm very pleased to be able to introduce it on your behalf, but also to thank you for consulting with Councillor Gower and I on the motion itself. So bear with me, it is a lengthier one. Whereas the City of Ottawa's provincial housing pledge commits to the building of 151,000 new homes in Ottawa by 2031, and whereas the city does not construct homes, but does provide a planning and regulatory environment that enables the construction of new homes, and whereas the city has taken steps to improve applications timelines and reduce red tape for home builders, but there is continued opportunity to improve our processes and to innovate to achieve the goals of the housing pledge. And whereas between January 2023 and September 2024, the city approved 50,191 new units in the development pipeline. Of those 50,191 units, only 8,300 have had building permits pulled. 24,732 are pending further approvals, and 17,159 are fully approved units waiting for development. And whereas Council has approved the Affordable Housing Community Improvement Plan, tax increment equivalent grant program, which will increase the stock of new affordable rental units for a minimum of 20 years, and whereas municipalities need to consider tools outside of the development review process that could help advance housing development, and additional tools would be useful in order to incentivize the growth we need and where we need it most. Therefore, be it resolved that Council directs staff to set up a specialized staff-led task force to discuss and evaluate ideas that would help the city advance housing projects and decrease application approval times, and report to a joint meeting of Planning and Housing and Finance and Corporate Service Committees with the results of their research recommendations and opportunities for early adoption at the earliest opportunity. And be it further resolved that staff develop a new dashboard that will show the following to the public: average time it takes to get an application approved, number of approvals so far this year, number of homes being built by builders. Be it further resolved that the review conducted by staff with the assistance and guidance of the task force include within its scope but not be limited to: 1. Reviewing and enhancing the role of Build Ottawa mandate vis-a-vis housing innovation, for example, in site planning and preparation, etc. The accelerated disposal of city land for innovative housing models, such as tiny homes, modular housing, opportunities for conversions of city facilities, and other structures or other innovations. 3. Long-term leases on city-owned lands, for example, discounted lease with option to purchase down the road. 4. Exploring the viability and legislative authority to consider lease-to-own models for attainable housing, vendor take-back mortgages, issuance of bonds, including the community bond, and other potential financial tools for developments on city land. 5. A streamlined urban design review process with an affordability lens. 6. Accelerated escalation and resolution for development approvals disputes. 7. Emerging technologies to streamline and accelerate building code reviews. 8. Looking at ways to fast-track non-profit affordable housing providers and pre-zone city land for affordable housing to speed up development. 9. Introducing a plan to speed up development approvals for federal surplus lands now in the Canada Public Land Bank or that is close to existing servicing and could be developed quickly. 10. A development charge deferral program. 11. Innovation around transit-oriented development. Finally, 12. Reiterating the importance of working with the federal and provincial governments at ways to replace growth revenue with alternative funding. So, Mayor, on your behalf, I'm pleased to make that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to my seconder, Councillor Dudas, and to staff for working on this with me. Whereas on November 7th, 2024, Community and Social Services staff, acting on Council's delegated authority, recommended 1645 Woodruff Avenue in Ward 9, Knoxdale, Merivale, to be the location of the first newcomer reception centre for the temporary housing of asylum seekers. And whereas the newcomer reception center system will help take pressure off Ottawa's conventional shelter system and address the immediate increasing need for appropriate support for asylum seekers. And whereas the recommended site at 1645 Woodruff is immediately adjacent to the Nepean Sportsplex, one of Ottawa's most heavily used recreational facilities. And whereas the specific location of the newcomer reception center will result in the long-term loss of a sports field. And whereas the newcomer reception center is to be built in the form of a modular, prefabricated building structure, which has a potential lifespan of 25 years, and whereas residents across Ward 9 have expressed concerns about uncertainty over the long-term future use of the prefabricated building structure and the impact that the newcomer reception center may have on the Nepean Sportsplex and its capacity to provide recreational programming in the area. And whereas the cost to procure, build, and operate the newcomer reception center would be paid for through federal funding from IRCC's IHAP program, but the City of Ottawa will be permanent owner of the facility. And whereas the proposed development of a prefabricated building structure offers a unique opportunity to integrate a multi-purpose facility that can be easily reconfigured and repurposed to support community and/or recreational activities once its initial use as a newcomer reception center is concluded. And whereas other municipalities and jurisdictions already use prefabricated building structures for a wide range of community, recreational, and other public uses. Therefore, be it resolved that City staff update Council and Committee on the newcomer reception center system, including the purchase and development of the prefabricated building structure as part of the next Integrated Transition to Housing Strategy Update Report in 2025. And be it further resolved that within 2 years of the opening of the newcomer reception center at 1645 Woodruff, City staff provide a review to Committee and Council on the results of the program, as well as a reevaluation of the need to continue using the structure as part of the newcomer reception center system. And be it further resolved that any future use of the prefabricated building structure, once the needs of the newcomer reception center are fulfilled, prioritize recreational uses, example pickleball courts, basketball courts, art studios, etc. And be it further resolved that any future use of the prefabricated building structure be determined only after comprehensive engagement and consultation with local communities and the local ward councillor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. I'll just note the intent of the Integrity Commissioner to submit the 2024 annual report for consideration at our next meeting. Motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Carr.
Que les règlements énumérés à l'ordre du jour sous le titre
That the
motion
bylaw listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws 3 readings be read and passed.
That carried. Confirmation bylaw. Councillor Carr.
que le règlement suivant soit
That
lu et
the
adopté.
following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of January 22, 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Inquiries. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As part of our commitment to sustainability and reducing our environmental impact, I'm requesting an assessment to identify the City of Ottawa's top 10 most energy inefficient assets. This review should focus on city facilities and infrastructure with the largest environmental footprint. When conducting this assessment, please consider, number 1, life cycle analysis, evaluate the environmental and energy impact of each assessment throughout its entire life cycle. Number 2, energy consumption, focus on assets with the highest energy use over their operational lifespan. And 3, retrofit potential. Provide recommendations on the most viable candidates for retrofits or upgrades, considering cost effectiveness and potential energy and emissions reductions. This information will be instrumental in prioritizing our efforts to improve energy efficiency and reduce emissions across city operations. Please provide your findings and recommendations by Q2 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Since Council's decision in 2023 to delegate responsibility to City of Ottawa staff for the implementation of a new model for receiving asylum-seeking refugees to our city, a number of controversial decisions and announcements have been made, including the choice of locations for the newcomer reception centers, the type of building structure chosen for the newcomer reception centers, details about the procurement process, as well as the manner in which much of this information was communicated publicly. Despite multiple public announcements and memos from program staff, the public still lacks sufficient clarity on many important questions, whether on site safety, transparency of process, or the program's financial viability. To ensure the highest degree of transparency and accountability around these sensitive issues, I am requesting that staff provide answers to the following. 1. The proposed site for the reception center at 1645 Woodruff has been identified as being in proximity to soils contaminated with hydrocarbons. While program staff have been responding to questions pertaining to these environmental concerns, there still remain concerns among the public about site safety. Question A. Can staff provide clear evidence and reassurance that the site is safe for use as a newcomer reception center and that its potential use does not pose a health risk to those who would be working and living at the center, as well as those who use and live in proximity to Nepean Sportsplex? B. What specific assessments or analyses have already taken place since the site was selected for the newcomer reception center, and what additional assessments will take place as part of any upcoming site plan applications? C. Aside from the response to this inquiry, what actions will the city take to make public all information pertaining to site safety? Question 2. On January 14th, staff initiated a procurement process to hire a contractor to design and build the newcomer reception center at 1645 Woodruff. The city's announcement of the procurement process listed BLT Construction Services as, quote, the only available and qualified vendor to perform the scope of work required for this project, unquote. In addition to pre-identifying BLT Construction Services, the procurement process provided other potential bidders with a 2-week period to submit their qualifications and ask to be considered for the work. Further, it stated that should no other vendor be willing to or able to meet that 2-week timeline, or should no other qualified and available bidders be identified, staff will award the $15 million contract to the pre-identified vendor. Given that this procurement approach has taken many in the local contracting construction industry by surprise, as was communicated in the January 21 letter from the General Contractors Association of Ottawa and the Ottawa Construction Association, can staff please respond to the following? A. Can staff provide their rationale for choosing such a limited procurement approach for such a large project? B. Can staff explain why, through their market assessment, they believe there to be only one available and qualified contractor for this project when reaction from the local construction and contracting community would suggest otherwise? C. Can staff provide evidence-based assurance that this limited procurement approach will provide good value for money for the taxpayers of Ottawa? Question 3. There have been multiple questions surrounding uncertainty of the funding for this initiative. Staff have indicated on multiple occasions that the initiative will be wholly funded by the federal government, but have not been adequately specific about the current state of the funding. Can staff please answer the following? A. Does the city have in hand sufficient federal funding to build and launch operations for this newcomer reception center? B. Does the city have in hand sufficient federal funding to acquire and launch operations for the other necessary components to this program, i.e. the Taggart Family YMCA, the former convent on St. Joseph Boulevard, and up to 20 homes across Ottawa, all of which are to be used as transitional housing? C. If no further funding is forthcoming from the federal government, for how long can the city operate the newcomer reception center on the existing federal funding, and would the city continue to operate the newcomer reception center in the absence of federal funding? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Tierney, you have an inquiry?
Yeah, mine will be substantially briefer. Can the Nightlife Commissioner provide City Council with an update on the progress of the Night Economy Action Plan, along with the expected outcomes for the upcoming year? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Any other inquiries?
I have a point of order, Mayor. Point of order.
Yes?
Mayor, without commenting on the substance of the first 2 inquiries we received today, these were not inquiries. They are requests for information that to produce these reports. We heard today we couldn't do a leaf blowing bylaw update because of the amount of staff, the finite time that staff has to do that work. So I'd like to have a better understanding, perhaps from the city clerk, how extensive requests for information and data can be presented under the inquiry section, and for staff just to accept that work. We hear they're at capacity, so while I'm not commenting on the substance of what is being asked, I want to know how staff are able to receive these inquiries with all the other work that they're doing.
Mr. Mayor, if may I? So there is a mechanism within the procedure bylaw where staff have the opportunity to review the inquiry, identify if it is in fact a significant inquiry which cannot be responded to, within existing resources and within a reasonable amount of time. And at that time would communicate that back to committee and council. And should the member wish to proceed at that time with their inquiry, a motion would be required.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Carr? I think what you want to say is that the proceedings of the City Council meeting of 22nd January 2025 be adjourned? Is that what you'd like to say?
Yeah, I got it. Absolutely. I just wanted to do it in French. Que les délibérations du Conseil du
That the
22
proceedings
janvier
of the City Council meeting of January 22, 2025 be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Oh, oh boy. So I like staying behind the camera.
Good afternoon, bonjour à tous. My name is Kendra Titley and I will be your moderator. Je m'appelle Kendra Titley, je serai l'animatrice de ce point de presse. Par ordre alphabétique, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. I will now invite each agency in alphabetical order to ask their questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. We'll now start with Elise Gura at CBC Ottawa.
I feel
Thank
like
you
we
very
put the
much.
microphone in the most awkward place
Yeah,
possible.
you know, it's got to be an obstacle course.
Yeah.
Let's just crawl over some things. So my first question is for you, Mr. Mayor. We had heard this morning about some federal funding for homelessness that Ottawa is in line to get. What's your general reaction and where's this funding going to go?
I'm grateful to the federal government for their support for some funding for our plan to respond to encampments in the city of Ottawa. And we have a comprehensive plan, which I think Clara can provide more details of. But this money will go a long way to supporting that plan. And as always, we're grateful for the support of the federal government on that.
And just in time, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is one of the many challenges that we're facing, and we need the support of other levels of government to deliver solutions to our residents. That's the nature of being a municipality. It's very challenging right now. The needs are growing, and we want to be as responsive as possible. We don't want people sleeping outside in our community, and so every amount of support helps. Oui, alors nous sommes très reconnaissants pour ces fonds du gouvernement
So
fédéral.
we're very grateful for this money from the federal government. We have a plan for those living in encampments. Those living in encampments, yes. So we have a plan for them. And the team here, the staff, city staff team rather, can give you the details of that plan. But this is a comprehensive plan to ensure that we're really helping as many residents as possible.
Also for you, it's regarding the new task force that you've been announcing regarding building. What exactly does this task force hope to accomplish in this kind of, I suppose, difficult and challenging file? And given the fact that it seems as though councillors are on so many committees and so many groups that they don't have time for constituent work, you know, like how important is it to have this task force?
I think it's a really important time for housing, and that's why it needs to be one of our priorities for 2025. We're not building as many homes as we would like in the community. It's not the city's responsibility to build those homes, as I've said many times. It's our job to approve homes. We've heard feedback from the community that they want to see approvals happen faster, and we've taken steps already to do that, but we can always do more. I think we're also seeing a lot of discussion at the federal and provincial levels about how funding will be allocated in the future to municipalities for infrastructure and for affordable housing based on the performance of cities in terms of their approval processes. So we need to be ready for that. We need to confront that head on. So I think it's important to get everybody working together on this, members of the community, members of the development industry, team here at the city, get everybody working together on the best ideas, look at what's been done in other municipalities, try different things, innovate. Some of those ideas are going to work, some of them are not, but we want to do everything we can to accelerate the approval of homes and allow for the construction of more homes in the city.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to Arthur White-Crummy, CBC Radio.
This will, I believe, also be for the mayor. It's on the light rail subcommittee dissolution. When the 2022 motion was passed to actually create the subcommittee, I think that you seconded it, and it was said that it was meant that it was critically important to provide focused and specific, oversight as this work continued. And I'm just wondering, with hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially billions of dollars in contracts still to go, work still to go on the East and West, kind of the East and West expansion, why can we afford to dispense with that specific oversight?
The Light Rail Subcommittee was formed in large part to respond to the recommendations from the public inquiry that came out in late 2022. And a lot of that work has been done. The remainder of that work is ongoing and continuous going forward. We consulted with members of council and with city staff, and the feeling was that the work could continue under the Transit Commission going forward. So we consulted with the chairs of the two committees, we consulted with members of council, and there seemed to be a consensus around the idea that all of that work and oversight could continue under the Transit Commission, and that at times there was even some overlap and duplication, and we could eliminate that by having it all happen at the same committee. So going forward, if council adopts the plan, that's where that work will be done. It'll continue, that work will continue, that oversight will continue, but it'll just be done at the Transit Commission instead of in a separate subcommittee.
But
oui. Alors, le comité pour le train léger a été créé pour adresser les recommandations de l'enquête.
To address the recommendations to address the concerns of councillors. Most of the solutions have been put in place. There are solutions that are still being developed as well for other issues. I've heard we've done a lot of consultation with the members of the council and with the chairs of the various committees as well. And they've all said that the work could continue at the Transit Committee level. The goals remain the same, but the work can continue under the Transit Committee without a separate subcommittee for the LRT.
So you talked about the action plan and the progress that has been made on the recommendations, but what about the remaining construction that's still ahead? The Transit Commission has a wide range of other responsibilities for operations, for the bus system. I'm just wondering, do you not think that this risks reducing the level of oversight?
I don't think so. And look, I think we've just had so far a successful launch of the Trillium line of lines 2 and 4 of light rail, following a very, very robust and transparent testing process that happened in November and December. So that was evidence that we followed the recommendations of the inquiry, and that there are different procedures in place now and much more transparent processes in place right now. So going forward, that work can continue through the Transit Commission. And, a lot of the same people serve on multiple committees. You can have a separate meeting and a separate group of people talking about something, or you can add it to the agenda of another committee. You look around the council table, there's the same 24 councillors plus the mayor who would be forming a separate committee. So it's the same group of people who have oversight, whether it happens in separate committee meetings or it happens by adding items to the agenda of an existing committee. The work is still going to get done.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We'll now go to Blair Crawford at the Ottawa Citizen.
Again, a question to the mayor, and this is maybe a follow-up to Elise's question on the task force on housing approvals. There was money from the Housing Accelerator Fund that I know you set aside to try and accomplish this. I'm just wondering why it's still a problem. I talked to a guy this week who waited 3 years for his permit, and his development charge almost doubled in that time. So why is it still a problem?
This is a challenging area, obviously, and there are all kinds of regulations and previous decisions of council to make sure that steps are followed in the approval process, and that guidelines are followed. And so there's a lot of process involved in getting a home approved in Ottawa, and so staff have been doing everything they can to streamline that process. And there's work that's been done already to try to eliminate silos and eliminate people being bounced from department to department. But there's always more we can do. And given that the number of homes that we need to build based on a growing population is significant, and given that going forward we may see pressures and incentives and penalties from other levels of government for infrastructure funding and other resources, we need to be ready for that. And I continue to hear feedback in the community that from people who think they have solutions. So we want to have a process for all of that and allow people to propose solutions, consider the best ideas, innovate, try out different solutions and see how they go, and just move forward as quickly as possible.
It's not just a matter of hiring more people and having more people on the ground doing the work?
We have hired more people already to process applications, so that work is going faster for that reason. But I don't think it's that simple. I think there's a lot of other things that we can examine to try to streamline the process.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Blair.
Thank you. On va maintenant à Alexandra Anger, Radio-Canada, ici première.
Alexandre Anger from Radio-Canada. Hello, I'd like to get your reaction to what Pierre Poilievre said. He talked about the public service and reducing its size. There were announcements on this earlier this week as to job reductions. He says that there needs to be more cuts. Could you react to that? I'm very concerned by that. The public service, of course, is the largest employer here in Ottawa. So if ever there are cuts to the public service, cuts to public service jobs, it'll have a huge impact on Ottawa's economy. So we have to be ready to face that crisis. We have to put in place solutions to do that. And like in the 1990s, I hope there'll be a partnership between the federal government and our city government to develop solutions. Perhaps the creation of programs for those employees who are let go. There was a program like that that was created in 1995, somewhere around that date. So if the cuts are across the board, there has to be a plan to provide for more diversity in Ottawa's economy. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Frédéric Pépin, Radio-Canada Television News. Ms. Bietlo, could you talk to us about the Council Truster's motion? The motion that was adopted is in two parts. A letter to the Premier of Ontario. The second part is on the studies to be undertaken by the City of Ottawa. What does this mean in the long term? Does it mean that there could be changes to city policies? How long will this study take? How long could the process take? How long could it take us to see change? And what's the process? Can you tell us? Well, based on the motion we adopt today, the first thing we would do would be to write to the province to see what their intentions are, how they intend to protect renters against illegal evictions. Now, based on that response, we can start our work here in Ottawa. We will study the development of a bylaw to address reno evictions, as we call them. Now, the scope of the project will be based on the province's response and how they intend to protect the renters, but we intend to follow the instruction of Council today. Now, if we do undertake this work based on the instructions we've been given, we intend to study this file for about a year and then to present a report of our research and our conclusions to Council for decision. That will be done in 2026. Could you perhaps answer that in English as well?
Council's direction today, the first thing we will do as staff is write to the province of Ontario to determine what their timeline is to bring into force some protections for tenants against illegal evictions due to renovations or renovictions, to bring into force the protections that they had already passed for provincial legislation. Following the response that we get, we will follow the motion, of course, and then begin our work on the development of a potential renovictions bylaw here in Ottawa. The scope of that bylaw will depend on what the province is doing, but we will take this issue away and study it, and then bring the results of our research and our conclusions and recommendations to council in about a year's time, in 2026.
Merci. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Sutcliffe, qu'est-ce que vous pensez de cette politique-là?
Mr. Sutcliffe, what do you think of this policy around the table? People have said that this is a provincial jurisdiction. It's not city jurisdiction. We've heard that there are bad actors, but not everyone, of course. Do you want Ottawa to take action on this? You voted in favor of the motion, but do you want Ottawa to put in place policies to protect renters, or would you prefer the province to do it so that you can focus on municipal issues? Answer. First of all, I would say that I'm very sensitive to the fact that there are residents here in Ottawa who've experienced issues with this, who've experienced a reno eviction. It's a real shame. It's a crying shame. I understand the concerns expressed by the members of the council as well. And I think it's important that we put forward solutions. But at the same time, it's clear that as provincial jurisdiction, it's not municipal jurisdiction. I do hope that in the near future, there will be a clear solution put forward by the provincial government. And I hope that it won't be necessary for us to develop a bylaw here at City Hall. Thank you.
This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. Thank you.
Merci.